Fantasy Fuel is powered by Poll Sports. Get instant fantasy football advice through real-time polls by visiting pollsports.com. Hello and welcome back to another edition of Tom Tuttle's Thursday Night Preview. This week we have the Washington Redskins against the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings have been pretty good the last few weeks, and they have thrown that they can throw the football too. Now, Kirk Cousins gets a lot of flack, but he's been doing a pretty good job the last few weeks. Now, that being said, sometimes it's against bad defense, and sometimes he's doing some things to make the team successful. So, be that as it may, you can take it or leave it. I think Kirk Cousins is actually performing a little better than expected, not just fantasy points, but as far as actual football quarterbacking, he's been doing a pretty decent job the last few weeks. Now, they've been trying to rely on Dalvin Cook the first 2 weeks or so, and it was working, but then it kind of didn't work one time, and so they decided they start throwing the ball. And once they start throwing the ball, they've actually been a better team, and that's what's been opening a lot of people's eyes. Kirk Cousins has been great, like I said. And then you got Dalvin Cook, like I said, was amazing the first 2 weeks. He's still been really solid, really, really solid. And then you've got the wide receivers. And you got Adam Thielen, who I know there's a possibility that he could play, but I just don't believe it. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this entire show thinking that Adam Thielen is not going to play. Keep that in mind. If he plays, a lot of these things will change, and I don't expect a lot of the other guys like Kyle Rudolph, who I'm going to talk about, and Olabisi Johnson, who I'm going to talk about as well. They might not go off as much if Adam Thielen plays, but I really don't expect him to anyway. So keep that in mind, please. And then you got Diggs, who has been up and down, but now it seems like it's starting to get into that trend where he can be something consistent, especially this week when Adam Thielen is not going to be on the field. So I would expect Diggs to have a pretty good week. Against the Redskins, yeah. Also, you can expect just the entire offense to be pretty good against the Redskins. Yeah, I would think Cook is going to be having a good day. Another guy I think is going to have a good day, and this is somebody who's probably on your waiver wire somewhere, and you might be able to pick him up, and that is Olabisi Johnson. He has been really pretty solid. If I can look up his numbers real quick, he's been getting something every single week, and this last week he got a touchdown, which really, it's a surprise that you'd hear a name like this. And so far on the year, Johnson has 13 receptions, 134 yards, average of 10 yards per reception. He's got that one touchdown, like I said. So this is something you have to pay attention to, and I would frankly start him in some leagues. But that being said, it's Thursday night, so sometimes you don't like doing it on short rest. Johnson's young enough. Johnson, I think, is going to have a pretty solid game. Honestly, everybody on this offense could have a really good, big game. Another guy I could see is Kyle Rudolph. I mean, who's going to take the targets away from Adam Thielen because he's not going to be on the field? So who's going to take them targets? It's going to be Kyle Rudolph and Johnson. And Diggs might get a couple more extra targets as well. But I think, honestly, you can make a solid argument for Johnson and Rudolph to have a pretty good week this week on Thursday night. Now let's go to the other side of the ball, and there's really only one player I'm willing to touch on this team, and that is McLaurin. It's pretty hard to say he's not going to be fantasy relevant because he has been fantasy relevant every time he's been on the field. Somebody I would love to have. I don't have him anywhere on my fantasy football teams, but that's just, it really stinks because he's been so good. But there's nobody else I want to touch on Thursday night. Adrian Peterson? No, I don't want to touch him. Case Keenum? I don't want to touch it. I just don't even think about the rest of these guys. There's only one guy on this team that I'm willing to touch, and that is McLaurin. Don't go anywhere else. Keenum would be a possibility if you're really strapped, really strapped for quarterback play. It's a bye week because these bye weeks are really starting to hit hard. Week 9, Week 10 is really difficult for me. But this next week, I actually need a quarterback, and luckily I traded for Ryan Tannehill because it's a very large league, and Tannehill was already rostered, which makes sense. But I had to trade for Tannehill. Now I got something to replace my Lamar Jackson. So it's definitely something that if you have Case Keenum sitting out there and you got Lamar Jackson, I don't know what else would be out on the waiver wire, but Keenum would at least be some kind of an option there. You know they're going to have to throw the ball a few times because they're going to be behind. So there's some kind of trust you can put into that. But again, the only real guy I want on this team is Terry McLaurin. He's been so good. All right, this is going to be a short episode because the Redskins really don't have much else besides McLaurin, so there's no real reason to go much further than this. Guys, I thank you for listening. Again, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a little review. That really does help us out. Remember to go to pollsports.com to get all your fantasy football questions answered. You can ask any question. I mean, seriously, who should I start? Is this a good trade? Anything. Go ahead and go to pollsports.com. Thanks for listening, guys, and remember to stay fueled up this fantasy season.